Hi there, welcome to this Word to Life video. Today we're looking at Romans chapter 13. We're looking at 9 to 14, verses 9 to 14 of chapter 13. Now I don't know how many of you will have heard the song All You Need Is Love by the Beatles. Sounds a bit cliche, sounds a bit cheesy, but actually there's something in the statement, all you need is love. Now, I'm not going to go into a wishy-washy sermon here about how love is the key to everything, love is everything, love is just be kind to one another and you're saved. Don't worry, you're not getting one of those sermons. But actually, I think there's something in this passage about love and how it helps us stick to God's will and to help us to obey His will in our lives. So that's our first point for today. Love helps us to obey God's will. Now, I'll be the first to admit we all fail to follow God's commands. We're sinners. Therefore we are going to fail to follow God's commands. It's just natural. It's just what we're good at. We're good at failing. But how can we in any way, shape or form follow God's commands? How can we try to live as good a life as we can? Well, by loving our neighbours. That's what Paul says. Paul is basically saying in this passage, love your neighbours. By loving your neighbours, you're not going to go and sleep with their wives or their husbands. By loving your neighbour, you're not going to go kill them. But also by loving God, you're not going to go and worship some other God, some other thing. You're not going to put something before God. Where your love is where your heart is. If you love God, you're not going to go and try to find pleasure, find satisfaction in some idol. So clearly, at the centre of what Paul is saying here is that we need to love our neighbours, and by loving, we also obey. Now, it's hard to love. As we've already seen, we all fail, we all let God down, we all struggle at loving. Well, what we do is, if we are a believer and a follower of the Lord Jesus, well, we use the love that He showed to save us. We use that love. We love with that same love. It says in 1 John, we love because we were loved. Because we are loved. We know what love is because God loved us. So therefore we love others. But for how long, you might say? How long are we meant to keep this up? Well, in verse 11, Paul says, besides this you know the time, that the hour has come for you to wake from sleep. For salvation is nearer to us than when we first believed. The darkness of judgment has gone for those who believe and trust in the Lord Jesus, and the day of our salvation is ever nearer. So therefore, we should follow God's commands. Until Jesus comes again, we should continue to follow His way, to worship Him, to bring glory to His name until He returns again. And as I've just said, this is not for our glory, but for His, that the Lord Jesus, that God may be glorified all the more. And how do we do this? How do we do this for such a period of time? Well, we've already kind of touched on this. Paul says in verse 14, put on the Lord Jesus Christ and make no provision for the flesh to gratify its desires. Walk in the light of Christ, wear Him, be satisfied in Him, seek things from Him. Choose to walk in His way. Don't find pleasure in other things. As I said at the start, love God, because where your love is, that's where your heart is. If you love going out and finding the latest clothes, the latest fashion items, the latest gadget, getting drunk, being broke, whatever it is, spending money, whatever it is, that is where your heart is. Your heart needs to be in the Lord. The heart needs to love God. When the heart does that, you follow God. You walk in His way. Seek God and not your own desires. That's what the Psalms are all about. They're all about the times when David or whoever has written that particular psalm has gone and sought after other things but God. But then also there are the Psalms of when they've returned to God, when they come back to Him, and it's all about love and how they've turned their eyes away from God, but now they're facing Him, and how they seem to walk in His way, walk in the light of Christ. That is what Paul is telling us to do. To wrap up then, to follow God's commands, to follow the way of Christ, not for us to be glorified, not for anything to do with our salvation, but that God may be glorified. We must love our neighbours. That is the key. And how can we do this? Well, by seeking God first, seeking His love, walking in the light of Christ, so that in all things you glorify Him as His love shines through you. I hope this sermon helped. If you want to post a question for Word to Life Answered, comment below or follow the link to the Facebook page or follow it to the Twitter and just leave a message or a comment there. Do like and share this video, and yeah, cheers guys, God bless.